To Grand Prix Oklahoma City. I'm Ben Seck. This is Jake Van Lunen, and we have Andrew Cuneo versus Matt Severa. Andrew Cuneo is playing a Abzan Company deck. Matt Severa is playing a Grixis Shadow deck. So these are actually pillars of the format, really.
Yeah, I think these are two of the best decks in the format. I would characterize both these decks as Tier 1. Andrew Cuneo's deck, I think, is right now probably the best collected company deck in Modern, and for those that have been following the format for the last couple of years, you know that is one of the most powerful cards you can play with in this format.
So Andrew starts off with the Birds of Paradise. Matt cycles a Street Wraith, 2 Street Wraiths. Obviously, taking advantage of the fact that being at low life is not a bad thing for the Grixis Death Shadow deck. Matt playing Fatal Push on a bird. Do you think you should always kill the first the mana creature?
I think the majority of time it's correct to do. I think bolt the bird, as it has been said for seemingly eternity, is a wise adage.
So Andrew plays a Scavenging Ooze. Matt fetching with his Bloodstained Mire.
And Matt already, down now to 10 life, I believe. That means if he plays a Death Shadow, he will not have the ability to have Stubborn Denial be a hard counter, but he might be able to exile his whole graveyard here.
Ooh, no, he just plays. I think it's 2/3/3 Death Shadows. I believe he's at 10 now.
I also believe he's at 10 after fetching there.
So the Scavenging Ooze actually has the potential of getting quite big because of the cycled Street Wraith and the Bird of Paradise. But he only has 1 green mana right now.
And with the colors that Andrew is representing, it's really hard for him to have some kind of card that can interact. So Matt Severa could potentially, I know he's already cycled 2 of them, but if he has another copy of Street Wraith in his hand, he could really get Andrew here if Andrew decides to try to get aggressive against the low life total. But you don't really want to do that against Death Shadow anyway, because it just speeds up their clock also.
So Andrew actually mulliganed this game, and so he's having a little bit of mana problems. I think he really relied on that bird, and the bird didn't survive. So Andrew plays a Duskwatch Recruiter.
Yeah, this is a really difficult situation for Andrew now, because he's basically just got a pair of bears in play. And Matt Severa is playing cards for 1 mana that, on this turn, are potentially 6 power creatures. So, very dangerous.
And I believe Matt is sacrificing his Polluted Delta, probably taking 2. Going to 7. And 13 minus 7, 6. So these are both 6/6s. The Shadow, just incredibly efficient creature.
It's a card that was popularized last year at Grand Prix in the Northwest, where Jerry Thompson, Josh Layton, I think, ended up winning the GP. A number of very well-known players all played the deck, and the top 8 was just littered with various Death Shadow strategies, and since then it's been a pillar of the format. Yeah,
so Snapcaster Mage, Leaf flashing back. We may need to, Matt probably needed to remove that from the game, but it didn't really make a difference. Andrew didn't have any mana, and he conceded.
Yeah, I mean, there could have been some sort of verbal thing going on where when he did the Snapcaster Mage, Andrew began conceding, and they were talking, and kind of picked it up. But it was a quick game there. Andrew on the mulligan. It's often very rough when you're mulliganing against a deck like Grixis Death Shadow because of how many inexpensive interactive spells they're playing. You can end up, when you're mulliganing, having a hand that relies heavily on, 1 card. And if they have a card like Thoughtseize, if they have a card like Inquisition, if they have a card like Fatal Push, they can deal with that 1 card for a single mana, and then you end up just, not doing much for the entire game, and they'll close very quickly with Death Shadows.
Yeah, and 2 mana, this deck doesn't really run that well on 2 mana. It has a lot of powerful 3-drops. Kitchen Finks, Eternal Witness, Courser, Tireless Tracker. So it, being stuck on 1 green mana, and 2 mana total just wasn't really where Andrew needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, just to talk about the pure power level of the Grixis Death Shadow deck. In that game, Matt Severa killed 2 of Andrew's creatures and had 14 points of power on the board on his 3rd turn.
Yeah, I mean, definitely if the Grixis Death Shadow deck does not give you a lot of opportunity to stumble, as you said, having a lot of disruption. So after sideboarding, how does this matchup change?
So Matt gets more interaction, which is obviously good against Andrew's combo. Andrew gets 2 copies of Maelstrom Pulse, which are very strong in this matchup in particular. Andrew also gets to, perhaps bring in Thought Seizes of his own if he's trying to protect particular combo pieces. Of course, it is difficult to sideboard in too many non-creature cards when you're playing a deck like Andrew's because he can't sideboard out his Collected Companies, and he wants to keep them powerful because Collected Company is far and away the most powerful card in his deck, and he's relying on it so heavily.
What does Matt get?
All right, so Matt, when you're looking at this, gets to bring in a card like Kozilek's Return. He gets to bring in Is It Static Casters. Engineered Explosives, probably one of the best cards you can have in this matchup.
So we're just going to have a quick look in on Eric Froehlich versus Austin Yost. Austin's on Affinity. Efro is on Burn. An unusual deck to see Efro behind. I actually was talking to him a bit earlier. He said, well, he thinks it's very well positioned and has a lot of great matchups. But Austin has a pretty explosive turn 1, putting 5 permanents into play: Darksteel Citadel, Springleaf Drum, Mox Opal, Signal Pest, and Hope of Girapur.
Yeah, Hope of Girapur is kind of an exciting card to see in Affinity right here.
Why do you think he has that in his deck here? What?
I don't know. I mean, it is an inexpensive flyer. Perhaps he thinks that the life gain from a card like Vault Scourge is not overwhelmingly relevant in a format where so few people are playing Burn.
I mean, I think he probably is still playing all those Vault Scourges, but anyway, Efro responds with a Monastery Swift Spear.
It is over 1 copy of Vault Scourge.
Oh, really?
He has 3 Vault Scourge and 1 Hope of Girapur.
It'd be interesting to find out from Austin, what made that change. I mean, it obviously means that you have, it costs you 1 less, or 1 less Phyrexian mana, so you can save some life. It may be good in some matchups, trying to think of a situation.
I mean, it's a little bit better against Engineered Explosives. It's when your opponent has a whole lot of spot removal, it's a little bit better because you don't pay the 2 life when it comes into play. It it does have its activated ability, which can come up in certain situations. It's not the the most relevant ability when you're playing Affinity, but you do have some combo draws, if you will.
Eric sacrificing Wooded Foothills, bringing in a Stomping Ground, which allows him to turn on the landfall of his Searing Blaze. So puts on a lot of damage there because the Swift Spear gets the Prowess trigger, the Searing Blaze gets the 3 damage. We're actually ready to get back to our main match, so we're going to head over there. Okay, so Andrew looks like he didn't mulligan this time, but it's hard to tell exactly. Goes with a bird. Matt goes for... Oh, he did mulligan, I guess. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it looks like he mulliganed here. Only down to 6, though. Unfortunately, now his hand is just an Archangel Avacyn. Very powerful card. This card I've seen played in quite a few different decks as of late in Modern.
Matt playing his Steam Vents and then terminating the bird. Obviously realizing that Andrew actually needs some mana because he didn't play anything for 3.
Yeah.
And so it means that his hand must be one, Matt knows about the Archangel Avacyn, but obviously the other cards in his hands are either land or more expensive than 3. So
now it's 2 turns away still from Andrew being able to cast this this Avacyn if he wanted to.
It does have another land in hand, I believe, so he may not be too far behind.
Yeah, but here, Matt has a lot of powerful 3-drops at his disposal here. He can Kolaghan's Command and get another Street Wraith if he wants to, while also making Andrew, killing one of Andrew's creatures on his turn. Or he could just play a Planeswalker or a Tasigur.
Yeah. So he plays Tasigur, leaving just the Terminate in the graveyard.
I didn't even know he had the Tasigur in his hand. An embarrassment of riches here from Matt Severa.
Yeah, I mean, Liliana Lost Hope as well in his hand, so brought it in very good against a lot of the creatures in Andrew's deck.
Yeah, Andrew playing a lot of 1-toughness things here. The Liliana, obviously, very strong in those situations. It also interacts very nicely with Snapcaster Mage.
I think one of the kind of exciting things about Modern is that there's so many answers. So there's a lot of flow between the decks. Andrew casts a Collected Company.
Yeah, using this opportunity of Matt being tapped out to get this Collected Company is pretty strong here for Andrew. And ooh, he finds a Tireless Tracker and a Bird of Paradise.
Very possible that Matt will play the Liliana, maybe activating on that Birds.
Yeah, I mean, also important to note that Matt does have that Kolaghan's Command, and if he were to use the Kolaghan's Command killing the Tireless Tracker, he would mitigate the amount of value that Andrew could get from it, and he could also take a card out of Andrew's hand, and if Andrew has a land in Archangel Avacyn, then Andrew's going to pitch the land and be able to cast the Archangel on the following turn, but...
Yep, and that's exactly what he did. You predicted it, JVL?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a really, really nice line here from Matt, because as long as he has some possible way to beat an Archangel Avacyn, which, he's doing fine on board even with that 4/5, and he has the Terminate in his graveyard, which he could combo with a Snapcaster Mage, or there's any number of other things that he could do too.
But Matt knows about the Archangel Avacyn, so he's just basically holding it back because he knows he can get a free block off. So he plays the Archangel. I think he blocks, unless he may actually. He's got a Snapcaster Mage in his hand, so he might actually go for the play that you said.
Yeah. So now with the Snapcaster in his hand, with that Archangel Avacyn trigger on the stack, that would give all of Andrew Cuneo's creatures indestructibility. Matt's going to go ahead and cast Snapcaster Mage, and he's going to target the Terminate, and then he's going to kill the Archangel Avacyn, leaving Andrew with just a Bird of Paradise and a Gavany Township as his interactive cards. So puts Matt in a great position.
Though Andrew does get the indestructible trigger, so he can block with the Bird.
That's absolutely true.
Not all is not lost, though. I think we both agree that Andrew's position is very, very
precarious if you will.
Right now. Yeah.
So Andrew, going to try to trade with the Snapcaster Mage by using Gavany Township alongside the Bird of Paradise, but...
It's a Staticaster. He just has everything.
Yeah, and is a Staticaster. We've already talked about how good Liliana is in this matchup because of all the 1-toughness creatures in Andrew's deck. Well, 1-toughness creatures are especially weak to Is It Staticaster.
So Matt casts Thoughtseize, but luckily for Andrew, or not unluckily, only has a land. But I think Matt's more than happy to pay 2 life just to have that peace of mind of nothing too crazy. Plays a Path to Exile on the Tasigur. Matt does not have any more basic lands in his deck, so he does not go search for something. Plays a Thought Scour targeting himself.
And not in the market to randomize his deck anymore, apparently. It's already been shuffled. Doesn't do anything.
So plays the Liliana, the Last Hope. Doesn't really have any creatures in the graveyard to get back, so he just ticks it up. But the combination of Staticaster and Liliana may be able to cover 90% of creatures that Andrew could cast.
Yeah, and the thing is now, Matt Severa, if he needed to, if Andrew were to play some creature that just, his hand couldn't interact with, Matt could even Staticaster his own Snapcaster Mage and then get back the Snapcaster via Liliana and then use something from his graveyard to kill it.
It's going pretty deep, Jake.
Just saying, it could come up.
Yeah, no, look, Andrew has two pretty mediocre hands that, against Matt, and Matt, really punished him because Death Shadow does not stop for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, Death Shadow, we talked about it at the beginning of the match. It is very good against mulliganing on the play opponents. And there, Matt Severa got to play against two hands where Andrew was mulliganing on the play. And he was a little land heavy for those early turns of the game. Draw steps didn't work out for him very well. And Matt Severa able to strip apart his hand early and take down the games very quickly.
Looks like the match with Eric Froehlich and Austin Yost is already over.
Wow.
So we may... Okay, we'll be back after these messages.